All right, everyone, I've been wanting to make a video about sod for a long time. Now, I've got other videos out there that talk about the sod installation process, and you'll see some of our projects actually under construction. But specifically, I've been wanting to talk about the differences in sod and all the different names that are out there. And if you're a homeowner looking to do research, or if you're a contractor that's just now starting to get more experience in installing different cultivars of sod, I want to do a little bit of history and a little bit of explanation for you on how warm season and cool season grasses work, especially here in the Southeast US. All right, let's talk about history of sod. Like, what is going on in the sod business where every year or every couple of years you hear of a new name or a new type or a new cultivar of sod. So that's what we call the different names of sod, as we call them cultivars. So Zoysia, there's Meyer Zoysia and Emerald Zoysia. Meyer and Emerald are cultivars. There's Zeon Zoysia, Zoysia, Zenith Zoysia. There's a whole bunch. If you were to look this up on the internet, you're going to see countless, endless names of sod. They are all different cultivars of sod. Bermuda is the same way. Tifway, Tifway 419, Discovery, Celebration, Tif Grand. So there's different names and different cultivars for those types of sod. Why is that? Why are there all these different names? In the sod industry, there are schools. The universities have professors that come to the university to teach. But in addition to teaching, the professors are also able to get grants, and these are research professors. So they get a grant to develop a seed for a company. And the way that'll work is they'll look at Zoysia, and for instance, and say, how do we take Emerald Zoysia or Meyer Zoysia and make it more shade tolerant, more drought resistant, more disease resistant, more pest resistant? How can we modify the genetics of what is existing and turn it into something new, market that, patent that, and make money off of that? Which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to make my tone of my voice sound like there's anything wrong with any of that. But that is what they're doing at these universities, is they're developing new seeds. Ultimately, what this comes down to is profit. And that's why I drew the analogy to the pharmaceutical industry, where they're constantly coming out with a new drug for diabetes or for sleep problems or for anything that might come to mind. There's always something new because there's always a pressure to produce new profits. So when you patent a sod that works and you can market it and you can have farms around the country that are set up to buy into that and will agree to grow that cultivar, the marketing trickles down. And so there's a lot of marketing literature out there, so people will look online. Once they look online, they're like, oh, wait a minute, you know what? I see that there's Zenith or Zeon, or my contractor recommended XYZ, Jammer, Zoysia, sod, something like that, because there's a lot of people upstream of the contractor that are putting this information out and saying, this is the grass that you got to use. This is the most shade tolerant, the best disease resistant, the most drought tolerant. This will take the most wear and tear. So we, as that information comes down through our suppliers and through vendors and through the information that we get, we pass that on to you, much like a pharmaceutical rep goes into the doctors and markets their drug for, again, for one condition or another, and says, hey, this is the best one that you have to use. But is it the best one? That's the question that you're asking yourself, because you're like, look, I'm the homeowner. I got to live with this for many years. How do I know that the latest greatest is actually the latest greatest, and in 5 years it won't be a dud, or they won't realize, like they do sometimes with medications, that oops, we made a mistake. It does not actually perform the way we intended or designed it to perform. And we realized a couple years or within a year after installation that we've marketed the heck out of it, everyone's bought it, and now these lawns are dying. So how do you make the right decision about what sod that you're actually going to use? I'm going to make that a little bit easier for you today. I'm going to give you some information that you can use to make that decision. Let's talk specifically about Zoysia. Zoysia is by and large, one of the most popular sods and lawns to install, especially as a replacement lawn. So a lot of builders build new homes. They put Bermuda everywhere because when they clear land, everything is bright and sunny. And then they put in those trees that create a canopy over the area. And after 5 or 10 or 15 years, all these trees have matured. There's a lot more shade now coming in from neighboring properties, and all the Bermuda grass that looked great on the day that the house closed now is dead and dying, and perhaps it's even more complicated by drainage problems. So in the case of Zoysia, which we get called in a lot to replace people's lawns, they say, I want to upgrade, I've heard Zoysia is the best. You're right, it is. There's 2 main cultivars of Zoysia. There is a thin blade, Emerald Zoysia, and a wide blade, Meyer Zoysia, that have been around for, I'm going to say 50 plus years. They've been grown, they are tried, they are true, they work extremely well, they grow extremely well, they are proven. So again, that's thin blade, Emerald, wide blade, Meyer. From these 2 cultivars, every other cultivar that you see is somewhat of a genetic modification of either Emerald or Meyer. So for example, you've probably heard the name Zeon Zoysia, or Empire Zoysia, or I'm trying to think of another one, Sarros Zoysia. These are cultivars of either Emerald or Zeon specifically, Sarros specifically are cultivars of Emerald, thin blade. Thin blade, generally speaking, is more popular than wide blade. I tend to use a wide blade Zoysia where I know this thing is just going to be hammered by the sun or have a lot of foot traffic. It's a little bit tougher. It's not going to wilt as easily under bright sun conditions, but to be honest, Emerald, I mean, a thin blade is my favorite, and it looks beautiful and it feels like carpet. Zeon, I mentioned that there are cultivars, so there are some cultivars that are proven, that have worked year after year after year, but I can tell you that there are cultivars out there, and I'm almost never and extremely hesitant to ever use brand new cultivars, because when they come out, you really don't know, is this marketing, was this research rushed, was this just hurried up through the system so they can get a patent? Because when you get a patent on a new name of Zoysia, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to be hyped. It's going to be marketed more because there's more money in it for the people who got the patent. Eventually, the patent wears off. So the pressure for researchers at these agricultural schools to genetically modify the seed and to make a claim that it can do something even more spectacular than the previous cultivars that were created is huge. There's a lot of pressure in the industry to do that. So my favorite types of Zoysia to install, Emerald and Meyer. Why? Because they've been around forever. Also, if there's ever a problem with your lawn, if there's a part of it that dies off, or you want to replace, or you need to get rid of, or you want to expand into, you can always get Emerald and Meyer. They're available now. They're going to be available for years. And the different various cultivars that you hear the names of, outside of Zeon, which Zeon is actually a wonderful grass. I love it. So keep that in the mix with Emerald, because that is pretty tried and true and proven. But all these other cultivars that come out, there's no telling that if I can even buy a pallet or 2 of it 2 years down the road. If you want to expand your yard, if you want to do anything different, if a part of it dies out, if you burn your lawn with some chemicals and you have to replace part of it, and you installed the latest greatest 2 years ago, I don't know if I can go in, if there's going to be even any availability. I don't know if farms are going to continue to grow it. So what happens is the schools develop the seed, the farms agree to grow this particular seed, and so they're going to want to start putting out a lot of marketing material to make sure that contractors buy it, because we're ultimately the ones that are coming door to door to your home when you call us, invite us out to replace your lawn, and you're looking to us for expertise and to know, hey, what's the best sod to use? And a contractor shows up and it's not really to their own fault, because we've been pumped full of marketing information and we've been told by our suppliers that you got to use this, you got to use this. But I'm telling you, if you go with Emerald or Meyer, Zeon is also another wonderful option. I think it's a beautiful grass. Zorro is a very good option. But if you really want thin blade, Emerald still works. It's, decades old, but it still works very, very well. And outside of, if you have a deep shade, I do like Zeon for that purpose. Bermuda works much in the same way as Zoysia. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 main types of Bermuda. There's a whole bunch of Bermuda. There's a whole bunch of different names. There's countless, endless names of Zoysias and Bermudas. But for the most part, Bermuda is going to be Tifway 419, which is your standard builder grade Bermuda that's going to require 8 hours of sunlight a day. There's Discovery Bermuda, which looks completely different. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous lawn. Discovery Bermuda performs amazingly well. It requires about 3.5 hours of sunlight a day, works for the deep shade, but it looks completely different than Tifway 419. It's got a different color green, it's got a different type of pile on it, I guess you could say. And then there's Tif Grand, which is the 3rd major type. Tif Grand was developed about a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, and it was designed to work in with Tifway 419. So if you don't want to replace your entire yard, but you do want to get areas that are under trees, maybe an area going down the left or the right side of the house that's a little bit more shaded, you can install the Tif Grand Bermuda. It's not going to look exact, but it will look very close to the Tifway 419, whereas Discovery won't at all. So I hope that this sod primer has helped you make a better decision. When you call us out, we usually have these conversations on site with homeowners and talk about all the different varieties, but know that all of the confusing information out there about Zoysias, about Bermudas, can really be narrowed down to what has worked year after year after year, and even 5, 10, 15 plus years down the road. What are the best cultivars to use? Now, behind me, you'll see I've written down cool season grass, and I've mentioned fescue. My personal opinion is I don't like fescue almost 90% of the time. There are situations where you will install fescue. So let's get this one out of the way in a hurry here. Where we're going to install fescue. Yes, deep shaded areas, but there are actually warm season grasses that will perform better than fescue in a deep shaded area. But usually when we're trying to stay in alignment with what is already existing in the neighborhood, or in a specific area. So a lot of times where we're installing fescue, it's where fescue is currently already on the sides of the house, in the front of the house. Typically you'll see that in older neighborhoods, especially in our market in the Atlanta area, where it's consistent with what is already existing in that neighborhood. Now, fescue is an easy grass to start from seed. The best time of year to start it from seed is going to be in the fall, usually in October timeframe. Another decent time of year is the spring, where it can be started from seed. But typically, where fescue can be replaced, it usually is replaced by a warm season grass. And I'm going to talk to you today about which warm season grasses are going to perform well in shady areas. But over time, what you need to know about fescue is it is a high maintenance lawn. It's not going to be very forgiving of heavy wet conditions or super dry conditions where it's exposed to the heat. Now, if you think about it, a lot of times where you'll see beautiful areas of fescue is like corporate parks. And if you go drive and you see like these large, massive corporate parks with just beautiful, beautiful grass, you want to know that the irrigation requirements for that are usually very high. And a lot of corporate parks will have ponds, retention ponds, that are designed to hold water for the purpose of irrigating these expansive, massive areas. So if you try to think like, well, I want that for my own house, and it's a reasonably large area, you're going to have to irrigate it. Now, when the temperatures get up above 80 degrees and the sun's beating down on it, you're going to have to irrigate very heavily, because that fescue is going to want to go into its own state of dormancy during the summer months, or during the months where it's extreme heat. If that heat goes on too long and it doesn't get the irrigation it needs, it simply dies off. The other thing you need to know about fescue is every fall you're going to need to aerate, and you're going to need to overseed your fescue yard so it continues to keep coming back in the spring. Now, as I mentioned, fescue is very unforgiving of poor draining soils, poor water conditions, any type of drainage problems, or heavy foot traffic. So if you have pets, if you have kids, and your lawn doesn't drain well, if either of these conditions exist, you're going to find that you're doing a lot of work to try to maintain a fescue lawn. That being said, fescue is beautiful. I mean, I love the idea that you can keep a grass green 12 months out of the year, and you don't have to look at a yellow lawn that goes dormant in the wintertime. One thing to consider if you do have a warm season grass is that you can overseed with a ryegrass seed. That ryegrass seed will give you the nice wintertime green lawn, and it's going to die off about mid-April to early May when the temperatures start to get above 70 degrees consistently. So that is really all I want to say about fescue. We can install it by sod, we can install it by seed. As a matter of fact, I don't really install much of any fescue lawns by seed. They're just not my favorite. I don't like dealing with it. The seed can wash out. There's a ton of problems that there are companies out there that do it very well. So I don't want to make it sound like because we can't do it, nobody can do it. There are companies that just specifically install seeded lawns, and I think that's a great idea. If you want to get a lawn seeded, call one of those companies. But so I've given you the information that I can give you on fescue. So I hope this information helps you make an educated decision about your lawn, your sod, and your property. Thanks. Have a great day.